Damen Moretti's office was exactly like him, immaculate, sophisticated, and a bit intimidating. He adjusted himself in his leather chair, examining the contract in front of him. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Damon asked his friend and lawyer, Alex, raising an eyebrow. Damon shrugged, his gaze fixed on the paper. "Absolutely sure, Alex. I just need a temporary wife, someone to help me with the small family matter." Alex shook his head in disbelief. "A small family matter? You're trying to impress your grandmother, right? She still thinks you'll never settle down, and now this!" Damien sighed. "She wants me to get married, or at least to be with someone serious. I figured that hiring a woman to play this role would solve the issue." Before Alex could respond, the door opened and a woman entered. She was beautiful, but not in an obvious way. She wore elegant yet practical clothes and had a confident, calm expression. "Mr. Moretti!" Her voice was soft but firm. Damien looked up, surprised by her presence. A motion for her to sit. "Yes, come in. And please call me Damon. You must be Lara Carter?" She introduced herself with a slight smile. "I understand you're looking for a temporary wife." He offered a faint smile, clasping his hands over the table. "Exactly. This contract is pretty straightforward. You'll be my wife for 1 week. In return, you'll receive a generous payment, and of course, a commitment that this won't go beyond a professional arrangement." Lara raised her eyebrow, studying him for a moment. "And what do you expect from me exactly?" Damon explained the basic rules. They would have to appear as the perfect couple during all family events. They'd need to share apparent intimacy, but without crossing the contract's boundaries. It was all quite objective. She took the contract and read it carefully, her eyes moving line by line. As he observed her, there was something about her that intrigued him, a confidence he hadn't expected. "So, Lara, what do you say?" he asked as she closed the contract and handed it back. She smiled, a smile that seemed to hide secrets. "I accept, Damon, but I'll warn you right now, I'm a professional. There won't be any personal involvement." He nodded, satisfied, but with a hint of curiosity. "Excellent. Welcome to my life, temporary wife." The next day, Damien and Lara met in the luxurious lobby of the hotel where he had reserved a suite for her to prepare for the family events. He waited for her at the entrance, and when she appeared, he almost lost his breath. Lara looked stunning in a simple yet elegant dress that highlighted her understated beauty. "You look incredible," he said, unable to hide his admiration. She smiled, seeming a bit surprised by his reaction. "Thank you. It's important that I meet the expectations, right?" Damon nodded with a slight smile. "Exactly. First impressions mean everything to my grandmother." Speaking of which, he leaned a little closer to her. "Do you think you can impress her?" Lara laughed confidently. "I've impressed clients far more demanding than your grandmother, believe me." He raised his eyebrows, intrigued. "You seem pretty confident about that." "We'll see," she replied, meeting his gaze with a hint of challenge. In the car, on their way to his grandmother's house, Damien noticed that her presence was surprisingly pleasant. There was something about Lara that piqued his curiosity. She didn't seem intimidated by the situation, nor was she anxious to please him. She was simply herself. "So, what made you accept this job?" he asked, breaking the silence. She turned to him, seeming to ponder for a moment before responding. "The money, of course," she replied directly, but with a playful smile. Damon laughed. "Fair enough. But it seems to me you're not exactly the type to be easily bought." Lara shrugged. "And I'm not. I choose my job carefully. And you? Well, let's just say you were an interesting challenge." He smiled, feeling that this week might be more intriguing than he had imagined. When they arrived at Damien's grandmother's mansion, he took Lara's hand before they entered. She frowned at him, surprised. "Remember, we have to look authentic," he whispered, squeezing her hand lightly. "Don't worry, I'm ready for the role," she replied, her confidence unwavering. As they entered, they were greeted by a group of relatives and friends. Damon's grandmother, Mrs. Helena, approached with a smile of pure happiness upon seeing her grandson with someone by his side. "Damon, and this is—" she asked, looking at Lara with anticipation. Damon smiled and gently pulled Lara closer. "This is my wife, Lara. She's everything I've ever wanted." Lara exchanged a look with him, trying to hide her surprise at how he had said it. It was as if, for a brief moment, he believed his own lie. Mrs. Helena beamed and hugged Lara. "Welcome to the family, dear." Lara returned the hug, smiling warmly. "Thank you, Mrs. Helena. It's an honor to meet Damon's family." As they conversed, Damon noticed that Lara was performing her role perfectly. She blended in well with everyone, and to his surprise, he felt almost comfortable. It was a feeling he hadn't expected, making him question what he truly anticipated from this week. The next day, Damon and Lara woke up early for the first round of family events. The Moretti family had a tradition of hosting a big family breakfast where everyone shared stories and laughter. For Damon, it was just another social obligation, but he was curious to see how Lara would handle his eccentric family. "Good morning, husband," Lara greeted him with a sarcastic smile as he met him in the hall. Damon chuckled, adjusting his tie. "Good morning, wife. Ready to face the Moretti family?" She looked at him confidently. "More than ready. I just need to know one thing. Is there anything specific I should know about them?" Damon hesitated for a moment. "My grandmother is very observant. She'll notice if we seem disconnected. Also, my cousin Rachel loves to poke and ask intrusive questions, so stay on your toes." "Nothing I'm not already used to," Lara replied with a challenging smile. As they entered the breakfast room, the family was lively, and upon seeing Damon and Lara together, they immediately turned toward them. "Good morning, Lara," Rachel exclaimed, grinning mischievously. "How's married life treating you?" Lara smiled calmly, taking a cup of coffee. "So far, everything's been intense," she replied, throwing a discreet glance at Damon, who stifled a laugh. Rachel stepped closer, visibly eager to know more. "And tell me, how did you two meet? I bet it was something romantic." Damon looked at Lara, signaling her to answer without hesitation. She began to improvise. "Oh, it was at a charity event. I was distracted and ended up spilling my drink on him. It was a bit of an awkward start, but here we are." The family laughed, and Damon nodded, impressed with how smoothly she handled the story. "Yes, and ever since then, she hasn't left my mind," he added, playing along. Lara gave a slight smile, seemingly pleased with his performance. Later, when they were alone on the veranda, Damon looked at her impressed. "You are amazing in there. It really feels like we've known each other for years." Lara shrugged, a playful spark in her eye. "I do my job well. You're getting exactly what you paid for." Damien tilted his head, intrigued. "So, to you, this is just a job?" She hesitated, turning her gaze to the horizon. "That's what we agreed on, isn't it? 1 week together, no emotional involvement?" He nodded, but a part of him felt a slight frustration. Even knowing this was just an arrangement, he couldn't help but think there was something different about Lara. "Right, of course," he said, hiding any trace of disappointment. But something was changing. They weren't just two strangers pretending to be a couple. With every moment, the line between their professional agreement and real life seemed to blur. In the days that followed, Damon and Lara found themselves in a series of social engagements, each one more demanding than the last. Dinners, meetups with friends, and family gatherings filled their hours. And to Damon's surprise, Lara played her part perfectly. That night, however, during an intimate dinner at the family's countryside house, something unexpected happened. The setting was quieter, with only a small group present. The atmosphere was relaxed, and the wine flowed freely. Damon found himself looking at Lara in a way he hadn't before. She seemed especially radiant, her laughter filling the room in a way that he found oddly comforting. Midway through the dinner, when the two were momentarily alone, Damon broke the silence. "You really feel like a part of my life, more than I expected." Lara laughed, seeming surprised by his admission. "Maybe it's because I put effort into it, don't you think?" He shook his head, smiling. "It's not just that I feel like He hesitated, not quite sure how to finish the sentence. Anyway, you're doing a great job. She raised an eyebrow, curious. Are you sure it's just the job? Before he could answer, Rachel, the nosy cousin, appeared, interrupting the moment. You two over there in the corner are too far away. Come closer, she exclaimed, making them laugh as they returned to the group. Hours later, the dinner ended, and the small group began to disperse. Damien and Lara were getting ready to leave, but as they walked toward the car, he stopped and looked at her seriously. Lara, I know this is a professional arrangement, but... He stepped closer to her, his gaze intense. Don't you feel like there's something different here? Lara looked away, but couldn't hide the faint blush on her cheeks. Damien, we can't forget what we agreed on. If we start mixing things, it could end badly for both of us. He nodded, though part of him wanted to argue against that right. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. She sighed, seeming to share the same inner conflict. No, you didn't make me uncomfortable. I just don't want to create unrealistic expectations. They stayed silent for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. But before they left, Damon made a promise to himself. He would figure out what he truly felt for Lara before the week was over. On the fourth day, Damien and Lara were invited to a charity gala, where they would be surrounded by friends, partners, and, of course, the press. Damien knew that this event would require them to act as the perfect couple, and he began to wonder if he could keep his feelings in check. Seeing Lara descend the hotel stairs in a long, elegant gown, Damon felt a tightness in his chest. She was absolutely stunning, and he couldn't take his eyes off her. You're staring too long, Mr. Hap-husband, she teased, smiling as she approached. Damon returned her smile, offering her his arm. I'm just wondering how I got so lucky. She laughed, but looked away slightly embarrassed. They walked together toward the event, and the journey was filled with a strange tension, as if both were aware of the thin barrier separating the fake from the real. When they arrived at the hall, all eyes turned to them. Damien noticed that Lara seemed at ease, gliding through the environment with natural grace. Throughout the night, they laughed together, toasted, and even danced. Damien realized that with each moment, it was becoming increasingly difficult to keep their relationship strictly professional. In the midst of the party, while they were alone for a moment, Damon took Lara's hand and looked into her eyes. Lara, I know we agreed this would only be for a week, but I can't help but think this is starting to feel real. She hesitated, but didn't pull her hand away. Damien, what we're doing is dangerous. This isn't what you hired me for, remember? He sighed, still holding her hand. I know, but I can't ignore how I feel when I'm with you. Lara looked into his eyes, and for a brief moment it seemed they were about to cross a line. However, she took a deep breath and pulled her hand back, regaining her composure. We need to finish this night the way we started professionally, she said, though her voice sounded slightly trembling. He nodded, trying not to show the disappointment he felt. Okay, but know that when this week is over, I don't know if I'll be able to simply forget you. Lara didn't respond, but the look in her eyes showed that she was also struggling with her own feelings. They returned to the hall, hand in hand, maintaining appearances for everyone else, but in that moment, they both knew they were far more involved than they intended. The morning after the gala, Damon woke up with a mix of emotions. He knew the week was coming to an end, and the thought of losing Lara made him restless. As he prepared for the day, his phone buzzed with a message from his grandmother, inviting them to a family lunch. When Lara entered the kitchen, he was sitting at the table, stirring his coffee. "Good morning, wife," he said, forcing a smile.
Grandmother invited us for lunch. The whole family will be there. She paused, looking at him. The whole family? That means we'll have to act like a couple again. Damon nodded, feeling the pressure building. Yes, and honestly, I'm worried about what that might mean for us. Lara frowned, concern evident on her face. Damien, we need to keep things clear. This is just an arrangement. He stood up, walking to the window, trying to find the right words. I know you say that, but I can't help but feel that we're getting tangled in something more. I can't just turn that off. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. And I'm not saying this isn't real, but we need to be careful. We can't lose our... in a world of illusions. Damon turned to her, his eyes firm. So, what are we going to do? Just keep acting like nothing is happening between us? Laura hesitated, her expression softening. I don't know. It's hard for me too. You're different, and it's confusing me. The tension hung in the air, and they both realized that the line between professional and personal was becoming increasingly indistinct. They locked eyes for a long moment before Lara finally broke the silence. We just need to focus on what's ahead. Let's go to your grandmother's lunch, and then we'll make a decision. He nodded, but his heart felt heavy. They got ready and left, each lost in their own thoughts. During lunch, Damien's family was lively and full of questions. As soon as they sat at the table, his grandmother smiled warmly at Lara. It's so nice to have you with us, dear. Damen talks so much about you. Damen shot a surprised glance at Lara, who smiled shyly. Thank you, Mrs. Moretti. It's a pleasure to be here. As lunch went on, Lara and Damien played their parts perfectly. However, in every glance and gesture, there was a silent understanding that the facade was about to crumble. At the end of the lunch, as they prepared to leave, Damon pulled Lara aside, away from curious eyes. We need to talk about this. About us. She looked at him, a mix of anxiety and anticipation in her eyes. Yes, we really do. After lunch, Damien and Lara stepped away from the family, finding a quiet corner in his grandmother's garden. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light over the flowers and creating the perfect atmosphere for the conversation they knew they needed to have. Damon took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. Lara, I can't stop thinking about us. This week is coming to an end, and I feel like we need to define what we're really doing. She crossed her arms, looking at the ground before turning to him. Damien, I've been thinking a lot about this too. Being with you makes me feel things I didn't expect, but I don't know if this is something we should pursue. He took a step closer, his gaze intense. What happened? Damon asked, noticing the change in her demeanor. She hesitated before responding. It's Clara. She's worried about you. And about our situation. She doesn't understand why I'm doing this. Damien furrowed his brow, feeling a mix of frustration and concern. You don't need to worry about what she thinks. This is about us, not her opinion. I know that, she exclaimed, raising her voice for the first time. But Damien, I'm in a relationship that isn't normal. I'm starting to worry about what this means. He stopped and looked at her, his expression shifting from frustration to understanding. I get it. This isn't a typical relationship, but you shouldn't let the fear of others' judgment interfere with how you feel. Lara took a deep breath, the tension in the room escalating. You're right, but that doesn't change the fact that people are talking, and I don't want this to become a problem between us. Damien stepped closer to her, holding her hands. Let's face this together. If your friend doesn't understand, that's okay. What matters is how we feel and what we want. She looked into his eyes, searching for the certainty he always provided. And what if this ends? What if in the end we're just fooling ourselves? Then we will have lived something incredible, and deep down we can always be honest with each other. There's no reason to be afraid of that. Lara nodded slowly, feeling his confidence seep into her uncertainties. Okay, let's talk to Clara. I'll explain everything to her, and I hope she understands. Damien smiled, relieved. And if she doesn't understand, then that's not your problem. What matters is that we're in this together. She smiled back,
and the tension began to dissipate. "Thank you, Damien. I really appreciate your support. Always. We're in this together. Don't forget." At that moment, they both knew that their connection was stronger than any external opinion. The challenge they were about to face would only bring them closer. The days that followed were marked by a mix of nervousness and anticipation. Lara and Damien prepared to talk to Clara, aware that this conversation could change everything. Lara looked at herself in the mirror, trying to convince herself that she was ready. "You look beautiful," Damien said, entering the room and breaking the silence. "Don't worry. Everything will be fine." She smiled, but her anxiety was palpable. What if Clara doesn't understand? What if she convinces me to give all of this up? He stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Remember what we talked about. What matters is how we feel. We'll face this together." When the time for the meeting arrived, Clara was in the living room, a concerned expression on her face. Lara felt her heart race as she entered the room. "Hi, Clara," she said, trying to hide her nervousness. "Hi, Lara. Hi, Damien. I came here because I'm really worried about you," Clara began, her tone serious. "I don't understand the situation, and I don't want you to get hurt." Damien sat next to Lara, his gaze firm. "Clara, I understand your concerns, but Lara and I have something real. This isn't just an arrangement. We've connected in a way we didn't expect." Clara looked from one to the other, and Lara felt the tension in the air rise. "I just don't want you to get hurt, Lara. This relationship may seem fun now, but what if it ends badly?" Lara took a deep breath, determined to speak. "Clara, I understand your concerns, but you don't see what's happening between us. Damien makes me feel alive. I don't want to give that up just because you're worried." Clara looked at her, her expression softening a little. "But you need to consider the risks. What if this ends in a disaster? And what if it doesn't?" Damien interjected. "Life is full of risks, Clara. And if you love someone, you should support them in their choices." Lara looked at her friend, hope growing inside her. "I want you to support me. This is important to me." Clara hesitated, and Lara felt the tension increase. Finally, Clara sighed, her expression filled with concern. "I just want you to be happy, Lara. If this is what you want, then I'll try to understand. But I need you to promise me that you'll be honest with yourself and with Damien." Lara nodded, relieved. "I promise. And regardless of what happens, I'll always be honest." Damien smiled, seeing the tension in the room dissipate. "Thank you, Clara. That means a lot to us." With the conversation flowing, the three of them began discussing what the future might hold. Clara started asking questions about their relationship, and the discussion that once seemed full of uncertainties was now turning into something positive. Relief settled in the room, and as they talked, Lara realized that the love she felt for Damien was only growing. They were willing to face any challenge together, and that made her feel stronger than ever. We loved having you here. Share in the comments what you thought of the story and how we can make it even better next time.